So we're here representing LexDAO. Is anyone familiar with LexDAO in here? No? Okay. So we are a guild of attorneys and legal professionals that are eager to explore and accelerate the functionality of the Web3 space. And one of the best, I'm a law student myself, so I can't really speak. I don't have experience yet. But one of the best is this guy right here, Kyle Smith, and he's a legal engineer for LexDAO. Does anyone know what a legal engineer is?
Kind of, but I would appreciate if you could explain.
What do you think it is?
Well, I think it's someone who knows how to navigate the complexities of certain technologies and is able to put it into words that is understandable for others. So.
That's pretty close to it. Essentially, do you want to give them the spiel, Kyle?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Legal engineers, we can write legal language and computer language and in human natural language. So yeah, so one of the things we often do though in practice is just in contract explain what devs are up to, because we can actually read the solidity and have that deeper sense of it. But sometimes we're the ones who get to write the solidity as well, and depends on the context. My background's actually more in JavaScript than solidity, but there's a lot of similarities between these languages, and so.
Just out of curiosity, did you have a formal degree in computer software or in something that is oriented towards understanding certain computer languages?
Some of us do. I have a JD, and then I have a patent in a new kind of database structure. Okay. So that's my, we don't quite have certification. Eventually we'll have licensing. It's a really early profession. And yeah, so we kind of feel each other out on if we have the capacity to be, and sometimes it's because we have a bachelor's, and sometimes it's because we developed a new kind of technology, or whatever it is. But we have to do something that shows that we have that ability. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But it's not quite a track. One of the things we're doing in LexDAO, though, is I started up the clinic in LexDAO, and that's an apprenticeship DAO. So the point is that we get more legal engineers. If you're interested in law and engineering, the combination, even if you don't want to, actually get that full-on certification, but you want to be good enough to get arrested, then do, check out LexDAO, and especially what we're doing at the clinic, because that's it's also because it's a apprenticeship DAO. It's work on the job, so you get paid to do that, learning it. And without further ado, so this is Legalities in Web3. It's public legal education. We were big fans of public legal education in LexDAO, especially in this space where there's so many unknowns. And so that's one of the reasons we're here having this talk. But it's not legal or financial advice, so do your own research. And so yeah, we explained a little bit myself. Kyle Wandler, he is the operator, right?
Director of Ops.
Director of Ops of DAO Research Collective, which is has some of the most brilliant minds in this space as part of the collective, and definitely they have conferences that they bring together the whole, basically all the best minds in this space, and so the research they do, all the publications they do, if you're into DAOs especially, and the legalities of DAOs.
And if I can step in and do a quick shill, if anyone is really interested in the intersection of where Web3 advocacy and legalities interface with real life elect, so the constituents meeting the elect, next month, or rather in April from the 2nd to the 5th, we're hosting DAO Harvard with MetaGov and a few other prominent industrialists, and we are going to be interfacing directly with, right now, 16 elected representatives. But we're looking to increase that, and we're also looking for more people who either have lobbying experience or other interest or experience with dealing with those legalities and kind of translating the nerdy stuff that we're doing here to something that's understandable by the people that are actually going to sign their names onto things that are either going to kill, mitigate, or propagate crypto within the United States. So it's going to be a pretty important event.
And then he also started up around the blockchain newsletter, and if you want to check that out, it's a really useful publication to.
How do we find your newsletter? By following the link?
Yeah, you can go to aroundtheblockchain.xyz. It's completely written by law students like myself. There's about 8 of us. We use AI to curate and scrape the internet for resources. So we gather about 500 crypto law resources per week. And then we use the quantifiable data mixed with qualitative data, like what's going on Twitter, what are people talking about, and that's what we put into the newsletter. And then all of the leftover resources we use to train a legal LLM. So.
Website is around the blockchain that XYZ.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so what takes,
Thank you.
and we'll put it in, we can put it in the Word document.
Sure, yeah. I always forget to show that one, so thanks, guys.
Put your email here, like the website here.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, I can write some stuff up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll explain. So we're going to do two parts in this chat. First part are legal entities, and then the second part are tokens. So in legal entities, we're going to have traditional entities. That's what you all know. There's some exceptions or differences between what you know, but pretty much what you know. And then there are entities that are moving from traditional into decentralized entities, and then there's fully decentralized entities, DAOs. For tokens, there are three kinds of tokens. There's stable coins, and those are basically like fiat tokens or just US dollars or euros, whatever. And then there's transferable tokens, or non-transferable, but we'll talk about why transferable is important. And there are also governance tokens, which is one of the more exciting parts of the Web3 space that, yeah, and we'll get into that. First thing is we're going to have a raffle for this hat. And this is a Meta Factory hat, and pretty fancy Meta Factory hat. So if you're into Code's Law is a memification of Code is Law. And that's one of the reasons there are legal engineers tend to be more in this space than in other areas of law tech. Solidity is a financial language that interacts with traditional systems, DeFi, that kind of thing. So yeah, so Code's Law is our, not taking ourselves too serious, what code is law. So yeah, so if you want one of these hats, just hit this QR code and then sign on. And actually, if you can, just go to this QR, or if you can just type in codeslaw.lex.clinic. We're going to do a poll as well, and the link is in there. So yeah, please visit that.
Everybody loves free stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me show you what that looks like actually. Let's see. Yeah, so just put your name here on the raffle, and then go to the poll. And the poll is here. Okay, and we gotta start the poll. So.
Okay, and we will announce the winner of the raffle at the end of the presentation, everyone. So how many polls do we have? 6 throughout?
What's not
It
working?
just says to the randomnamepicker.org, and it's not going to.
So just stay on just stay on the Word
Yeah,
document.
that random name picker, once everyone's
Yeah.
names are in, we're going to use a very
Yeah.
simple website that I found about 30 minutes ago that will shuffle through everyone's name and pick a winner. Hopefully it does it in a fair way. I haven't really proved it, but so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, maybe for some of us it doesn't.
If you go to codeslaw.lex.clinic, then that'll be the Word document, and then
Yeah.
the very
Just put your
and
name
then
in
put
there.
your name there, and then after that for the poll, the very first hyperlink, go to that hyperlink, and then I have to start the poll.
And if you put your name down 5
do
times,
that.
I will probably notice. So.
Okay, so I've started the poll. So if you go to the poll, so first go to Codeslaw. Here, I'll show again. So go here, and then just click on this right here to go to the poll once you've signed in. Yeah, and if you want us to follow you on social media or each other on social media, add your handle.
That's cool. Everybody throw your @s on there. We'll follow you.
Yeah.
Okay, so who wants to learn about some law?
Yeah, polls are up. Okay.
That's a lot. That's an excited crowd. I can hear it.
Okay. So here's the first poll. Have you contributed to a Web3 project before?
Can we just get a show of hands too while everyone's filling this out? So the majority of people, I'd say. Okay.
Okay. wait a couple minutes. Everyone, if you want to participate in the poll, have you participated? Yeah? No? Okay.
No?
Where do we get to? Sorry.
Where do you get to the poll? Okay, so
yeah.
first here, which is either the QR code.
Did you scan the QR code? Okay.
Oh, okay. Yes, QR
I'll
code
be completely honest.
or this link right here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So did you put your entry in? Okay, great. Okay.
Yep.
So let's see.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to see if you could add Eric to that list.
Do you want to just type in Eric with a C or a K?
Oh, is it?
Eric with a C.
I did
Yeah,
pause
the
it, I
poll might
think.
be paused. So the poll question was, have you ever contributed to a Web3 project?
Okay, hold on.
And then we called you anons.
Yeah.
So I mean, it doesn't really that much, but I don't know, maybe this will be used for like statistical research or something.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of the idea, actually. And I have to get the link for. I don't want to.
Accurate data, right?
Yeah, we do.
love
We
it.
need very accurate. This is very scientific. What's happening right now? I just need to.
I wonder
Well, it's
how
gonna take
many
too long.
times when during workshops people get asked questions like that and like the room votes, like how many times it's actually captured and then used to like, I don't know, for user research.
I don't know, but I know we've got an excellent data sample here. This is definitely representative of Web3, so
And hopefully one day Web3 will be representative of the entire world, right?
there you go.
So
Oh, there we go, how that works. Okay, so the answer to the poll, the first poll was 5 people said yes, they have, and then 3 people said no, they have not.
Okay.
Okay.
We will get to the second poll shortly. Please don't vote on that yet.
All right. Well, I mean, you can't. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Anyway, so next is, let's do the slideshow again. Yeah, traditional entities. So how are they the same or not the same as, how are they different? So sometimes projects, whether the best intentions or not, they have to be traditional entities. And examples often are ones that provide insurance, just off the top of our heads. So WorkDAO is an example. Yeah, they have the word DAO in their name. Sometimes organizations in this space use that to signal that they're providing services for DAOs, but they're not actually DAOs. But again, WorkDAO can't be a DAO because what they do is they make special purpose legal vehicles in multiple countries so that people can actually get insurance
Right.
and such while being freelancers.
And
Office is another example.
I think that's something we should touch on. DAOs are such a shiny and fun and new instrument in the space that everybody is trying to pour a little bit of DAO sauce onto everything. Everybody's trying to create a project that they say is a DAO. We do need to come to a better consensus across the industry as to what does and does not constitute a legitimate DAO legally. But I think we are all well aware that there are many DAOs in the space that are not actually DAOs. And it's something that will need to be addressed moving forward. But in other situations like my company, for example, the DAO Research Collective, we're a nonprofit based out of Toronto. But we are not a DAO ourselves, and we know that we can't be. We know that we need to be centralized and academically based to conduct the kind of research that we do, but we don't claim to be a DAO. So there are many opportunities in the space. I think something that people get wrong is they think it's taboo to be centralized at this point. And there are certainly situations where centralization can help a project, especially when you're starting an initial protocol from a development standpoint, and then progressively decentralizing from there, which we'll get to. But the important thing to keep in mind is that each project, the purpose that it's serving, it may be better served by a centralized structure, and it may be better served by a decentralized structure, in which case a DAO would be appropriate. But it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
And expect similar kind of experiences as you've had in other industries, including more traditional tech industries. So you might have to sign an NDA, you might have to do non-compete, but generally in our space, actually those things are frowned upon. And a lot of the value add, at least at this really early industry, is that people are in multiple groups so that they can make those networks, connections, and friendships. Both of us are in multiple groups, definitely, and that's one of the reasons we're value added in this space. Our Rolodex is bigger, that kind of thing. So, but there are certain unusual Web3 things like bounties on D-work. You might be familiar with the Kanban system in D-work, but maybe not bounties so much, and definitely bounties that are reward in native tokens or stable coins, something like that. Yeah, so the way to get paid in this space sometimes isn't normal, but it's interesting. I'll give it that. Okay, so the next poll. We already have 6 people who've done it, and in the interest of time, I just want to say that all of the 6 people who commented said yes, they have formed a legal entity, so that's pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Can I ask who answered yes to that? Can you raise your hand? What sort of legal entities have you formed?
LLC.
LLCs, okay. LLC, LLC, pretty much everyone LLC, yeah. So?
C-Corp.
C-Corp, this guy.
Nice.
But yeah, LLCs are probably the easiest and most familiar legal entity to bring to life in the United States. And do you guys have a pretty good concept and understanding of what the entity is for? What a corpus represents? So that's an entity that can interact with other entities, right? So you're essentially creating a person that is a conglomerate of other persons, or in the case of an LLC, its members, right? And that's to enable you to interact with other entities or to bank yourself as that company, right? So just making sure we have a clear understanding.
It's a legal fiction. Yeah. Yeah, that's a company. Good point. Yeah, that's not a corporation. Yeah.
And I've heard it before. Why is it entity of choice for the cryptos?
It's entity of choice in the U.S. in a lot of circumstances. It's not a corporation, so it's not a separate legal person. So its filing onus is a lot lower than if it's actually a separate legal person and maintaining it over time. But it gets a lot of the liability advantages of a full-on corporation. And then for tax, it actually can choose between a couple different things. It was an innovation in the late 70s by Wyoming, and yeah, I don't know of any other country that has LLCs. Canada, for instance, doesn't have LLCs, and its business law is very similar to the U.S. So do research that, because it's a pretty cool area of legal entity, not legal person. And all the rest basically are legal persons, which requires maintenance of them as a person. So like they have to have their own tax identity, that kind of thing. Well, LLCs do too as well. Pardon me on that. Okay, so decentralizing traditional entities over time. This is another one, and this is actually very common in our space right now. A lot of the early organizations that are doing great, there wasn't any of these DAO things. It was really just MakerDAO that did that. But now the pioneers have kind of paved the way. These other organizations that have cared about the technology are really excited to become DAOs. And yeah, we work with a few that are doing this transition into decentral. So it's actually more common than you might expect. So when you join, if you join early, it won't be that decentral, but to keep up with the organizational culture itself is going to shift, and so you're going to have to be prepared for that, for better and worse. You might eventually have the transferable tokens that are market capped. That's a little bit harder right now in the regulatory space, but when we figure it out, hopefully we can get back to that. And that's a way for you to be one of those early employees that makes millions that we hear about for Apple and Cisco and all that kind of thing. But just using crypto, so it's a lot easier to kind of set that up, and it doesn't have to be so top down. Yeah, so these things called airdrops, and that's, so it's not just the people who've been working on the project that get the airdrop, but it's people in the community and such. One of the reasons is because that's the way this is decentralized. So unlike a company where it's just the early employees who get it, it's also the early users and quite a few other criteria that are partially developing to make sure that people don't game the system, that airdrop farming, it's a real problem. But also because regulations right now are really up in the air, and we don't really know what's the best way to airdrop to make sure that it's fully decentral. You can think of an airdrop kind of like an IPO, but it doesn't have a really, really expensive prospectus. To start DAOs, these organizations on-chain, it's all public anyway. And so there's this thing called information asymmetry, and to start, we try to have information symmetry, which means you don't have to be the people working in the organization to know what's going on in the organization. And that's, yeah, why we work in public. You can join a lot of these DAOs Discords, and you don't have to file or apply to be employer or something like that. You can just be interested in being in the Discord, and then you learn what's happening, and community members can participate. And that's all as an alternative to going through NASDAQ, IPO, that traditional method. So yeah, so it's exit to public open market or exit to community, not exit to a public closed market. So if we think about NASDAQ, these centralized markets is, yes, they're markets and public, but they're somewhat closed. They can kick you out, that kind of thing. Whereas in the Web3 space, these markets, not only are they public, but they're actually open, like an open space more like on the, I guess, like think about public closed market like you're going to a cafe, and public open market is like you're going to a park kind of thing.
And just really quick to touch on returning to the airdrops thing, I'm sure everyone is aware of the SEC's presence in crypto law in the United States. Airdrops especially present themselves as something similar to dividends or to an IPO. And if you're at all familiar with the corporate structure, when you do have an IPO, you have to register with the Securities Exchange Commission. Now, that is not something that crypto companies frequently do when they release an airdrop. So it is something that, as we said before, this is not financial or legal advice, but it's something that you would want to research very carefully and contact a very talented attorney to tell you whether or not you're in violations of securities law, potentially. And to just tread carefully, because right now there's so much ambiguity. Uncle Gary is very upset. He's very upset with the industry at large. And it's just always better to tread carefully because you do not want to find yourself in violations of securities laws.
We'll delve a little bit more into it with straight up decentralized entities on that concern, because that's one of the bigger concerns in this space, to keep yourself safe and just have the positive sides of Web3 legal, not the negative sides. Unfortunately, because we're so early and we really are pushing a lot of really cool financial legal innovations, one of the complexities you should take seriously as you explore the space is that legal is more risky than in other industries, but that's also why there's a much higher chance of gaining kind of generational wealth, people willing to deal with that headache and successfully navigate it and not get wrecked. Yeah, and so contributors should expect fewer and fewer centralized decisions all the time. That means contributors, employees and such, are incentivized to be leaders, and everyone is a leader. The example were an organization that had a leader, was a really strong leader, and they wanted to go to decentralize is Gitcoin, and Owaki stepped down, the guy who led it, and big reason is he didn't want to have that where everyone's looking to the CEO. It's antithetical to what our space is about. So if you find someone that everyone likes as a leader and listens to get things done, that person will likely leave because that's occurring, if they're doing the right thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the next poll. It's possible to start a project from a centralized structure and then decentralize operations over time. Is this true or false?
Awesome. And to help you verify that truth, I wrote on the board here, you can look up Progressive Decentralization by Mark Boran. He's one of the most phenomenal attorneys in the space, very talented. He's general counsel at Paradigm. And he wrote an excellent playbook. It's specifically for attorneys, but you can definitely learn a lot about progressively decentralizing from an initial centralized protocol development state, right? The coders, the developers, they have to agree on what they're building. An idea doesn't come from 50 people at once. It comes from a single source, and then it spreads outward. Think of the Fibonacci sequence as a Nautilus shell spreads outward, right? And Mark does a very good job at translating that into something that's easy to understand for everyone, even if you're not a mega, law nerd like we are. So highly encourage you to do that if you are exploring building a project and then progressively decentralizing.
How do we find that link?
I didn't write the link. It's called Progressive Decentralization, a Playbook for Web3 Attorneys by Mark Boran, Boiron. So.
All right, so this is the final type of entity. These are the DAOs. These are the ones that are full into Web3. They have drank the Kool-Aid. Yeah, so budgets are decided by the community. This is bane of a lot of our existence, but when it goes great, it's really robust and resilient. Compensation and tokens. One of the things you should watch out, in addition to what we were saying earlier about it potentially being a security, and you could be liable to that if your DAO doesn't, if it's considered a partnership, is that there's just volatility. And so if we hit a bear and the token goes down, then especially I had a situation actually when we hit the bear where I got a bunch of tokens and I was supposed to buy some things for last ETH Denver actually, and I lost 2 or so thousand, and so suddenly my budget, I should have immediately switched to stablecoin. That was what I should have done. Not legal advice, but personally, that's what I would, if I had a time machine. And luckily it worked out because the people I was working with, they just said, okay, buy less stuff. So it was cool. But if you're interacting with the market, that's the problem. Another problem is phantom profits. So if it goes up, but then it goes down before you sell it, the moment you receive it, the US government is going to take that as the amount you made. And so then, even though you don't actually have those bags anymore, you're going to, and we're figuring out how to eventually reconcile that. But presently, yeah, volatility is a real concern. Looking at your overall estate, your overall wealth, if it kind of dwarfs it, if you don't have that much wealth, basically. And so in that case, you should really seriously consider the moment you get these tokens that have volatility, move them into stablecoin. Or at least half of them into stablecoin, so you can still get the benefit of the upside of volatility, and that's the way to potentially get generational wealth, that kind of thing.
And before we move on from this, should we touch on the Howey test? Is it too
That's
in
okay.
depth?
it's okay. Like
Okay, never mind.
basically,
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
these tokens are being considered more and more securities, and the test is really open-ended. It's problematic. I think more that you should watch out for right now because it's less in the news. So if you're reading about this industry, you should be getting like info about that. The one that is actually more dangerous is that if your DAO decides not to have a legal entity, then
General
if it goes to court, say your DAO is doing stuff that would have it go to court, so think about what your DAO is up to, more or less risk. Like, so for instance, the clinic I'm running, it has more risk because we could be considered giving legal advice, not legal services, and then people could make decisions that harm them and then come back at us. So if your DAO chooses not to be a legal entity, the most recent case law is saying that the court will decide a legal entity for you, and that legal entity will be a general partnership, which means you have full liability. So if your DAO has chosen something even as simple as an unincorporated nonprofit association, so it's not even incorporated, you're much more likely to have liability. And so it's really just like you would expect in a traditional setup where you are
So-
the company is the one that gets hit if there's a big.
Who remembers UkiDAO recently in the news? Does anyone? This is what happened to them. They did not form, they had no legal wrapper around their operations. They were found to have conducted a securities offering, right?
Yeah.
And they were essentially brought to court and labeled because they didn't label themselves as a general partnership. Now that means that each member of this general partnership, the members of the DAO, equitably share liability for whatever, let's say the SEC wants to take them out for 100 million. Okay, now these, 10,000, regular guys and girls who are just trying to operate a DAO and have fun are now equitably responsible and liable for that amount in damages that the SEC might bring forth against them.
Yeah, general partnerships no one really wants general partnerships
No.
ever. You're someone you work with hits someone while they're driving their car on work, and then you're as liable as if you hit that
Right.
person or whatever. So
Do you
it's
want to
not
be
good.
responsible for the bad actions of your neighbor, or
Yeah.
do you want to protect yourself?
So one of the pluses of that, though, is you're not nexus with any country. Thing about DAOs is oftentimes DAOs from the get-go are international in nature, people from around the world, and so then the DAO, like even practically can't pay taxes absolutely everywhere. So a lot of the time this is a tax consideration why DAOs don't choose a legal entity, or eventually wait until they can get something that's like a BVI or Marshall or something that is tailored to this circumstance. And another aspect that's related to it, but there are many reasons for this, is that you'll have anonymous coworkers. So you'll spend a lot of time interacting with them, but you won't actually know their name. One of the most effective workers at LexDAO, I only know him as Simply, and I don't have any other
It's true.
identifying information.
Nobody knows his name, but he does great work. So,
Yeah, especially as he does, one of the things he does is he analyzes whatever tool is out there if he can remain anonymous. So when Gitcoin Passport came out, which is decentralized identity, so it is saying, it is identifying someone in a sense. He wanted to make sure that he could be identified as a real person, which is the main point of Gitcoin, while at the same time, no one actually knowing who he is and finding him out.
Right.
And so that was his test for Gitcoin. And there are many reasons why people want to be anonymous. One of the things that we do in this space is that the ledgers are totally public, which is really radical. It's one of the reasons, superpower of this space is that we can permissionlessly build on top of each other and do the financial analysis and such. But it does mean that in a sense, we're all showing our bank accounts. So the way we can counteract that is, we show our bank accounts, but no one knows who it is that's showing the bank account, right? That the bank account, yeah, we know there's 10 million in it, but it's an add-on.
Who
And
knows
so
what
yeah.
he's describing? What's he describing? Either of you.
Yeah.
Just an EOA.
But he's describing how you can verify, validate without proving, like I can prove to you I live in a certain jurisdiction without giving you my name, address, email, zero knowledge
Yeah,
proof.
yeah.
Yeah, so.
I don't know why. That you're just referring to the blockchain and the laws of the blockchain. But,
And of course, you can have multiple entities, right, or identities online. Maybe you do already. And so if you've got one wallet that you do a bunch of transactions on and you don't keep very much money in, and then you do another wallet that's a cold wallet, so it's actually a physical thing that you have to plug in, and that's where you keep your tens of thousands that you built up. And then that one is anonymous, right, where the one that you're doing a bunch of transactions is quasi-anonymous or just open. Consider that as well. So not just, okay, I have one identity online, but actually I can have multiple, and for various reasons. That's important. in this space.
Everybody has a shitcoin wallet. Come
Yeah,
on.
there you go. Yeah.
Everybody's got one. Yeah.
You're mentioning some of these like legal pitfalls and things to watch out for. Is there a certain point where you might encourage the DAO group to step into that realm, get more serious, or would this apply to pretty much anybody who wants to touch this thing? Like, let's say you want to just do something somewhat casual. It's like maybe 10 people doing a collector DAO or something where you're collecting objects together or something like that. Would you also kind of somewhat recommend that you get into having these legal protections?
So as a collector DAO, what about the DAO appeals to you? You want the collective power of the DAO to be able to do the collecting, right?
Yeah, to maybe rally like people around.
So how would you be structuring that? With a multi-sig, I'm supposing?
Possibly, or a kind of a membership into the DAO, and then you get sort of benefits of ownership through
Right.
that.
So let's just say theoretically you do form a multi-sig and all of a sudden you can't get the third of the 4 signers to sign anything. You can't contact him, you can't do anything. It looks like he's doing funny things on chain in the treasury or something like that. Would you like to be legally liable for his actions, or would you like to be protected?
Probably protected.
That would be your answer.
Even if you're doing something where you don't really need protection, you're fine with that. You just have a higher risk tolerance, or the particular fact pattern, it's okay. Like, for instance, that person you mentioned, it's your old friend who's never done anything wrong, so whatever. You go mountaineering with them and he could killed you just doing that, right? Yeah.
Starting to have potential.
Well, so-
It's
but-
subjective, right?
yeah, but
What's
it-
your level of trust, you know?
Well, that's one consideration, and so you could have a situation where that's actually not that concerning. But even if you're not afraid of stuff and you're just like good to go, so there's no like spider sense shit. What you might still want a legal entity if, say, that you're not just collecting NFTs, but you're collecting the IP that's behind those NFTs. And if you are, then what's owning that? Because a DAO that has no entity can't own it. There has to be a legal entity that owns IP. And so either all of you own it as a shared group, or you have a separate legal entity that you all own together, right? And so those are other reasons why you might want to have, but in our space, often people do CC0. They say, I don't want IP, and that is a major reason for that. And we've had recent discussions with some DAOs out there that don't want legal entities. It's really impressive what they're building out because of that consistency. And we're still having a chat about maybe making a tiny little legal entity off to the side of the DAO, like that we can then help them with their trademarks, so then someone doesn't mess with their trademarks. So there's lots of reasons why a DAO might want to have a legal entity, either in a tiny little side a corner of it that's like in the shadows, kind of shamed, or the whole thing, what have you. And Lexdale, one of the things we do in that clinic I was saying is our students work with early stage DAOs to kind of feel out all those reasons of for or not entity, and what is this liability, what's not that liability. But education is the key, which is why we're here.
In regards to the intellectual property thing, when he said CC0, does anyone here know what that means? CC0, so that's a Creative Commons copyright. It essentially means that you're willing to let your work be used by anyone so long as they do it for the purposes that there's like 4 different types.
Zero purpose. CC0 is as close as you
They
can
have
get.
4 different types now. I'll show you later.
Okay, but real quick, CC0 is,
Okay.
I work with Creative Commons, I know in detail, yeah. So the CC0 type, Creative Commons has a few, but the CC0 is as close as you can get to public domain as possible. Public domain means no one owns it. Old works that have been around for hundreds of years is public domain, no one owns it. But even if you want something to be public domain that you made yesterday, it can't because of statute. So CC0 is your way of saying, well, okay, I know I can't, but here, I've licensed it, effectively the same. And then Creative Commons, they're really leaning into the commons, and that one's the most, but there are other ones that have share alike, and which means that the way you shared it, you want whoever makes a derivative or uses it, they have to share in the same way, and then
Or to attribute the original,
attribution,
yeah.
And so there are a few other ones, and they do it pretty well, and we're actually working with them to do licenses directly for NFTs. Yeah.
So if you have a brand and you
Yeah.
say it's a Creative Commons, then anyone can use it however they want.
No, because that's
You would have
trademark.
to assign it to each instance of intellectual property. So let's say it's a painting, you would have to put the CC0 license on it. Let's say it's an essay, like that would need its own CC0 separate from the painting's CC0, even though it's under the same.
You can't. That's trademark. And so Creative or copyright is about that it's the author that owns it because they made the original work and the creative and such. Trademark is actually about the consumer. So if you have Coca-Cola, you know it's Coca-Cola, and so it's a very different reason it exists as law. For instance, trademark actually exists in common law, whereas copyright is statutory. Because of Berne Convention, the moment you fixate something in copyright, it exists, so it kind of acts like common law, but in reality, it is statutory. Where trademark is user, consumer protection, all that kind of thing, and so you can't public domain that. But there are
Like-
other methods, and we've had some conversations. And
So like Nike has the swoosh trademarked. You can't just put the swoosh on a piece of clothing and sell your clothing with the Nike swoosh because you know it will sell better because of that. That's the trademark, like the whole brand.
And so, for instance, you can have Apple records and Apple computers. That's okay, but maybe nowadays, because Apple computers is so big, that would not be okay because people would think Apple records would be Apple computers. Apple Records is the Beatles record label. So yeah.
So I have actually 3 questions.
Yeah, sure.
It's such a amazing flow of things. So first of all is, so about this small entity that will be owning the IP, how is it even possible? So and then how to set it up so it's kind of related to this DAO, which is not a legal entity. And maybe it's like a very loaded question, a long answer, then we can shift to the second.
It's at the edge of what we're building out right now. So it's a great question. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons we're mentioning it right now is because it's top of mind. There are things called sub-DAOs, and that's probably how we would define it right now is we have a sub-DAO that only does that. It's a holding company. There are innovations happening that we might actually call that a node. But that's a terminology shift that hasn't happened yet. But so right now with the terminology we have, that would be a sub-DAO. That's just a special purpose vehicle sub-DAO. That's how I would say it. So no or very few employees. DAOs, again, because they don't want to be legal entities, they don't want to have employees. That mentioning before, Opolis and WorkDAO, do think about that you can get pretty good health benefits, but it's through these, with Opolis, it's a co-op. So you actually join a completely different company. You hold shares in that co-op, and then that's how you have insurance. So you don't get it directly from an organization, and you're not their employee. Nobody is, even the operators.
For WorkDAO, it's
I'm
through
not
an
employed
LLC actually, because I do
Yes.
get compensated through WorkDAO.
There you go.
Yeah.
So the second,
Yeah,
the second question is about you brought up this DAO that didn't label itself as a legal entity, and then they go to court and labeled as a general partnership.
Yeah.
What was the DAO's name, and then what would be better alternative for that from the get-go? Because to kind of label themselves as LLC, so they cannot get just like any frivolous and inconvenient label assigned?
Well, so two things. First of all, the name of the DAO was OOKI OOKI DAO. Second of all, it's a bit deeper than just labeling, right? You have to go through, like if you don't label yourself an LLC, you register with the state as an LLC and file an EIN. And so it's more than just saying, I'm an LLC, you're wrong, I'm not just a general partnership. You have to go through the legal registration and the approval. And essentially somebody has to be doxed, you need an RA. Somebody has to be representing and interfacing with the off-chain realities. Something that I see, like I love the degen side of crypto, but there are jurisdictional legal realities that are floating over the top of you, and it's not something that you can just escape or something that you can circumvent simply because you think you've outsmarted everyone with your coding. You might get away with it for a while, and like I'll be rooting for you, but you probably won't get away with it forever. So just
And
a
there's
word of
some
caution.
cases where the devs, they actually are centralized and then they make the DAO so that they can kind of actually put the liability in the community, but they're still directing it. So it's a lot of complexity here we're still figuring out. And unfortunately, in this current political environment, it ebbs and flows. But the one we presently have, we're not getting that much support from regulators in USA. So other countries, oftentimes when DAOs are built out, the more the ones with good funding and the most sophisticated, they can chat with regulators, they can co-build it. And hopefully US will get back to that. But right now it's fairly antagonistic. He said Uncle Gary Gensler, even within the SEC, there's a lot of politics going on.
Yeah.
The thing that we advocate for within the hardcore crypto law community, which includes LexDAO and LexPunk Army and a few others, is safe harbors. We gave up for a bit, but we're trying again for safe harbors. And what safe harbors means is if you do certain good faith activities, then whether you're ultimately correct in this case law that is confusing for everyone, is less consequential. You'll have a safe harbor, which means you'll get out of jail free. And for copyright, that's Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is why YouTube can actually function. And if it didn't have safe harbors, YouTube could not function. We need it in this space as well, but more for securities and other issues. You can contribute to multiple entities. We mentioned that before. It's actually oftentimes considered why a benefit, and you can outcompete your, outcompete is a more traditional sense. Your peers, you can stand out a little bit more from your peers because you have that, your tentacles can kind of reach over the other place and such. So that's one of my favorite things about this space is you don't have to be a company man, salary man kind of thing. For the rest of your life, you're at Sony. And
That's
only
right.
that.
You-
Essentially,
Yeah.
going back to the UPDAO, like, what would you recommend them if they were speaking with you, 1 month before this disaster happened?
Is who speaking with you?
If you were speaking, if they
Uki,
were reaching to you for advice,
what was their
like,
function?
half a year before this legal troubling happened, so what would you? And it's obviously it's not a legal advice, but like, what is the alternative that they have to become an LLC and not someone as a founder?
There are a lot. I mean, one is where do
Many
you want nexus,
alternatives.
jurisdictional nexus. So then you have to decide if you want U.S. nexus or another part of the world, because DAOs are global, right? So you got to think about who your contributors are and such. It's a very case by case basis, but a common solution is using Cayman Island Foundation and such, but these are nonprofits. It really is case by case, unfortunately. I mean, yeah, and that's
So-
the thing. We're confused. No one has the right answer, and so we would want to sit with your DAO. If you did it the way that we do it, Lex DAO, we would give you very low cost services that help educate you as much as we can. Generally, kind of tailored to your specific, but not enough that you can actually make a decision based on what we said. And then we pass you to a law firm that can maybe just structure it for you. And you kind of understand the different pieces when you talk to them about the structuring, so you can have a lot lower costs. Otherwise, yeah, we would be reckless if we made recommendations, because it's just shot in the dark.
Does anyone know why it could be dangerous to form an offshore entity and be like UkiDAO and have a lot of operations occurring here in the United States? The IRS doesn't care if you're in the Cayman Islands, if you are in the Virgin Islands. They don't care if you're at the core of the earth. If that's where you incorporated or formed your LLC, but your development and your building and your marketing and your operations are occurring in the United States, those are taxable events to them, and they will come after you. They don't care that you think you're in the Cayman Islands and you visit there for 2 weeks of the year and you say all the right things. They just don't. They don't care. And they don't like us to begin with, so it's not really wise to antagonize them. And that's why it's so subjective, is, maybe it is best for a DAO to form offshore, but you have to be sure that the activities of that DAO are also happening offshore, at least to a large extent, because there are just a million ways to die right now. So it's about mitigating those risks, right?
Is that why most of those types of entities are usually found on DEXs?
Or why DEXs usually use those entities, right? Because DEXs have such a theoretically a global market.
That might be reasoning, but that's not good reasoning.
It's reasoning, but it's not good reasoning. Yeah.
So another thing is, interesting in the public ledger, and it's immutable. That means IRS, I think, with adding some caveats here and there, they have 10 years that they can go back decide to eventually go after you, they'll probably wait until you have enough money that it's worth it, they
Right.
can get it back. So just because it's clear coast, they might just be in.
Yeah,
the
it'll be year
fattening the
7.
pig.
You thought you got away scot-free,
Yeah.
and really they've just been letting the cow fatten up so they can get more milk out of it.
Yeah.
Like that's what they're doing.
It's pretty heavy.
They'll lull you to sleep.
yeah.
They will.
And there was someone that we were just on a panel yesterday, and he is VC for Prospera, which is an interesting legal sandbox, we call them. And that's one of the fun aspects that for us legal engineers that's happening as a counteraction to the SEC not being playing well or fair or friendly, is that there are these special economic zones that are areas that we can build out law from scratch. So anyways, that's what he invests in. And he said actually that he has 3 legal entities for whatever project he's doing to start with. So I personally, the clinic is 2, but oftentimes you will want more than just one entity. A way to do that, because it takes capital, is you can start with an entity that is just really basic when you're a small team, build out that capital. That basic one you can have a nonprofit because you're not intending to do profit, build out that capital, and then pay the 10K or whatever you need, maybe probably more retainer. If it's something that's really fancy, it's going to be at least 100 to 200K to do it. And then if it's top of the line, it could be upwards of $1 million to do the entity. So you think, okay, I'm not just going to start something. I'm going to actually squirrel away some capital to pay appropriately for the legal fees to get it done.
And just so people aren't scared by those numbers, those are like Uniswap size DAO numbers.
Those millions, yeah. I do think at least 10K.
If you're, you can,
serious.
like LexDAO, one of the subsidiaries of LexDAO is ColliDAO. You can start an on-chain LLC in like 5 minutes for a few $100s. So it's not as.
To start with, exactly.
Right,
And then you
exactly,
build
like
up
something
10K,
small.
And then you get it properly.
So
Instead
it's
of
not
trying
so.
to do it with 2K.
Yeah, it's not financially terrifying.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, it's a good shout out to one of our products is, you can have these really simple entities, don't get too complex, build out your capital first, and then have the lawyers who actually know how to get it done to do it. And so go to, I'll write it down, Cali.gg, that's an example
Or
of
just
one
go
of these
straight to
offerings.
Wrapper. But yeah.
Yeah. So it's,
Yeah, Ross, another legal engineer, genius type, started all this. So you can form a company online, on-chain, a couple of minutes,
like the
couple
goddess.
$100.
It's spelled like the goddess. Okay.
Adage to the series corporation, is that right?
I'm personally not such a
Delaware.
fan unless you're to me it's on hard mode. You can't get a bank account with it yet. Eventually it'd be really cool because as far as computer science goes, it's recursive, and so it makes a lot more sense from the engineer part of us. But the law side is still very cutting edge, and so it's hard mode. Unless you just want to stay internet native, then it's cool. It's a really cool one. Yeah. And then, for instance, Sporostat, what Sporostat was doing with it was sweat tokens, sweat equity. Yeah, it's definitely a place to look out for if you like this place, or this hard problem that we're dealing with. But otherwise, if you got your own hard problem, I wouldn't pay attention too much to Series LLC. That's a fantastic question. Okay, so here's the next poll. Are you currently contributing to any DAOs, Anon? And let's move to more clip because we're well over half time.
Yeah,
but we got
sorry.
half of everything. Okay, so we've got.
Can I
Oh,
ask
yeah,
you something?
of course, yeah.
You were bringing up interesting question about the kind of like level of trust and then having the multi-sig with the partners. Can you explain exactly how will it affect the kind of legal structure or the multi-sig structure? Kind of like two cases when you have your long-term best friend versus when you have just someone who's more business and less kind of more trustless relationship.
One of the things I personally really like about multi-sigs, and not just multi-sigs, but the proposal method as well, there's 2 ways to handle treasury. One is to have proposals where you have, where people have a bunch of tokens, you can have a bunch of people and they all, if it gets over 50%, that type of thing, right? And then the other one, is the multi-sig where you hopefully just have a handful of people and then you have, like, say 4 out of 10 that need to activate whatever transaction happens. So one of the things that's really cool about that is you can have a stranger you just met on the multi-sig and put 10,000 in there, 100,000 in there, and know that they're not going to steal it, especially if you've taken that stranger, another stranger, so no one has prior relationships, and so they're not going to et tu brute you. And so that's truly essential. That's one strategy. But even if it's, hopefully if it's your close friend, then you have much more, like, you don't think they're going to steal from you to get going, so you might not necessarily need to have that safety. But still, I've seen relationships that have fallen out in this space actually that they were using technology that had multi-sig, like the treasury, and then they're using technology like Twitter that doesn't. And what happens is when partners get really mad at each other, it's falling out. Yeah, they do a first strike, and then they change the password. You can't do that with the multi-sig. So to me, one of the biggest innovations in this whole space is that instead of a bank account, that's joint ownership. So legally, whatever in the bank account, the law just considers that all the parties own it equally. We haven't done estate
That's
stuff too
interesting,
well.
yeah.
We haven't
That's
done estate
interesting.
too well because not very many people have died yet. So that's something this is a young space. And so that, for instance, if you're thinking of making products, that would be a good, yeah.
If the person gets out of, again, if there is some sort of like a situation in the scene when the person moves away and then nobody has access to
Yeah.
the treasure.
Exactly, you gotta watch out for that.
Well, theoretically, there would be
You can break your
an-
treasury in a lot of ways, and that's one way. When you break your treasury, it means that you can't find enough people to do
yeah,
the multi-sig.
designate it to your
Yeah.
beneficiary.
So that's all.
That'll solve
Proposals
that.
are a little safer that way, because proposals oftentimes you just need to have a quorum, and if people aren't paying attention, then the treasury can lose out on a vote, right, that they maybe don't like. So somebody maybe could. That's the problem with proposals. You got to pay attention constantly because something can happen, like a week-long proposal, and you didn't notice it, and then something you didn't go your way when you could have voted to have it go your way. But the problem with the multi-sig is that it can break. That say three out of the 5 multi-sig people die in a plane crash, and then forever that multi-sig's bricked. It's $1 million multi-sig.
There is no designation beneficiary.
You could.
You can,
Yeah.
and that's how our industry is becoming more sophisticated. And we're abstracting addresses. So we know of this concern, and there are some really smart teams that are deep diving there. And if you're interested in that, that's a really great place to deep dive. If you're thinking about where opportunities in this space, when you ask these questions and people on stage go, we're not there yet, then you're like, ooh, that's maybe where I can provide a value add. So I can't give you an answer there because we haven't really figured out. But he's gonna saying where it's gonna go with the beneficiaries and stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Okay, but in the interest of time, we're gonna move forward. These are great questions. It's just we can talk about this definitely for hours. Okay. So stable coins. So the stable coins should stay at the same price of fiat, but it's really important to know not all stable coins are the same. So there was UTC. Maybe we should change UST. Thanks. We should change we should change the name probably from stablecoin because it's
Algorithmic stablecoins.
that helps. But the fact it's stable makes us feel confident. Right?
Algorithmic unstable coins.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Algorithmic volatile coins.
Yes.
In the 70s, like cigarettes,
Yes.
there was like not still enough of tobacco to
Yeah.
beat that.
Yeah, and so some are USDC. That one is, I think it's 1-to-1 US dollar.
1-to-1.
So that's almost, maybe it's even better than the FDIC in some ways, right? Probably not.
It's not cash on hand, but
Anyway, it's pretty damn good for a stablecoin. But the one that blew up, it was algorithmic stablecoin, so it's highly leveraged. And you should pay attention to this because your DAO might get a better deal when it's selling its native tokens for a stablecoin that is more risk. And so if you think all stablecoins are the same, you're like, oh, good, my DAO now has these stablecoins, or Treasury can weather the storm. And then when the storm hits, your stablecoin gets depegged.
Yeah.
Now we have learned when it gets depegged, it
who
just goes to
remembers
zero.
the day that UST depegged?
Yeah.
I think we all remember that day. It was like, I shouldn't say that, but it was almost like 9/11 for crypto. Like it was dark. It was a really dark day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Watching the live Masari charts, just like.
Wanted to puke. Yeah, it was horrible.
So it's stable coins compared to fiat. Why don't you just have fiat, right? If it's stable, fiat's more true source of value. One of the reasons is you don't have to use Western Union. You can transfer around the world, and you got to pay gas, but compared to Western Union, it's quite cheap. You'll still, though, if you're going to pay your rent and such, going to have to figure out a way to off ramp to a bank.
Fiat.
And so Coinbase, right? Hopefully, all you all know how to do that. But if not, that's pretty quick Google search, so you can kind of get there.
Yeah. Or DM us. DM us. We'll help you with that one. That one you should know how to do that.
Custodial risk versus non-custodial risk. We saw just with FTX, custodial, where there's risk there. It can go bankrupt, right? They can. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. We can't audit them, and so they can just lie to us and do crazy accounting. And they're fancy billionaires who are hanging out with all sexy celebrities, and so they must be trustworthy. And then there's non-custodial. The problem with non-custodial is if you lose your keys, then you can't access that. And we probably have seen all of those YouTube videos of people freaking out because they have $1 million in Bitcoin that they can never access. And I think there's some guy that's like, there's some garbage bin where he's like, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, there's really sad stories where people can't let go of losing generational wealth because they lost it. Yeah, pardon? Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
It's just
yeah,
been,
he-
like searching.
Yeah, he's like raising millions of dollars to like Spaceballs like comb through the garbage fill. Like, yeah.
And one of the reasons we're focused on DID in our space quite a bit and abstracting addresses is that we can actually create recovery. So we might be able to solve recovery down the road with more sophistication. But right now, definitely pay attention. And we just had that chat about multi-sigs where the other people on your multi-sig go away for some reason, and then you can't access it. So you could actually do everything right yourself, and if you're sharing a treasury, you still could not be able to recover it, and you can't then go cry to your parents because
Right.
it's not
Who's
custodial.
heard the phrase "not your keys, not your coins"? Most of you, some of you.
Copy of it, there are 0 copies of it.
I'm sorry, what?
It's just general data storage. If there's 1 copy, there are no copies.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
1 is 0, 2 is 1,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 is 2. You need at least 3 copies of like your seed phrase in like different places.
I like
in order
that.
for it to be- in order for it to be secure.
Yeah. I like that. That's smart. Yeah.
They're nice tricks, yeah. They're tricks.
Yeah.
Lots of times when people have really great tricks, they don't want to tell other people because then other people can maybe find their nuts, you know.
It's just standard data backups.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and there are other ways to even be more safe.
I just put
You
my
don't
my
necessarily
seed
get
phrases on Tumblr because it's a dead tech.
So this vote right here, I'm just going to skip this vote, but hopefully you all own stablecoins. If not, it's very enjoyable. It's whatever. It's more reliable than. Okay, so
On paper in a safe place.
paper is good. Yeah. Okay, so project native tokens and there's also ledgers. That's important to mention. Ledger, whatever. Okay, move them quicker. So transferable tokens. Where do we see these? Project native tokens or ecosystem tokens? Ethereum's an ecosystem token. Project native token. Can you give me a quick example?
Uni.
There we go. Uni.
Yep.
That's project native. So that's the actual standard within Ethereum that's on top of it, and that's a smart contract. So for instance, Matic on Polygon, that's a native token. Oh yeah, a DAI. That's a stable coin. That's a native token for the Gnosis chain. So that's kind of interesting. What did you say? Yeah. Or,
Oh, I said L2. When
oh
you
yeah,
said
yeah,
RE.
L2. Yeah.
Near has USDC too.
Who does?
Near.
Near. Okay. Nice.
So one thing that if you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to get a native token. Should I do this as a contributor? Do I want it? One of the ways to go, this might be okay. It might be exciting. I might make a lot of dough off of it. Is if it's recognized by a custodial entity. So, for instance, if Coinbase puts your token up, that is at least you know you have more liquidity, and so that's important. That you not only liquidity, but you have price discovery. Those are two. If you want to be more navigate risk safer with these kind of things, think about the liquidity and the price discovery. One of the factors that come in there is does custodial entities recognize it, and if it's just on a DEX, how much trading is happening, and that it's not wash trading. Wash trading is when the trading is bullshit. It's the inside group that's just moving back and forth, and that happens in NFTs as well. Wash trading.
And fiat. Watch the show Ozark.
Oh yeah. Yeah, a lot of these tricks are traditional TradFi tricks that have moved into DeFi. Okay, gain or lose value. Yeah, volatility can be good or bad depending on where it's up, and how your position in relation to it, how you're shorting and such. Consider converting all or part to stablecoin. I think I mentioned this earlier. DeFi opportunities, staking. That's unusual, I think, in traditional finance. That's and we do quite a few innovative stuff with staking. It's kind of the beginning of staking. Yeah. Unfortunately, the SEC has done a really surprising pushback on staking. So even staking we thought was kind of the cool area of DeFi that we could innovate and be left alone. Turns out, nah, that's a security too because dividends. I get it, but and Gabe guessed it. it's still frustrating. Watch out for
Gabe
securities
always
law.
knows.
Just generally, always watch out if you're dealing with U.S.
If
stuff.
Gabe Shapiro says something today, just know that it will be true 5 years from now. Follow him on Twitter.
But don't let him black pill you, even though he
Yeah,
wants-
don't let him be mean to you, though.
Yeah, he loves
Yeah.
to turn everything
Bully
off.
him back. Bully him back.
Ross turns everything off too. The top engineers, legal engineers, lawyers
Yeah.
in our space are both degen. Okay, anyway,
like
We don't-
degens,
let's not gossip about her. Okay, do you own any project native tokens? This is a pull up. If you want to jump on it real quick. Otherwise, in the interest of time. So we got 2 people voting right now. One says yes, one says no. So there you go. Okay, let's just.
So who said yes? Who owns a native token? What do you got? You have Uni? Nice. Are you a delegate? No, that's still cool.
GMX,
DMX?
G,
GMX. Okay, cool. And I think you raised your hand?
I was just gonna say I own your token.
Okay. I think, yeah, that's
I do carry OMG
no.
and do the delegation on OMG. I don't know if that's the same.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I believe it's non-financial, but it is a project native token. Yeah, project native tokens don't have to be financial. I've actually made a lot of project native tokens. With Kelly, you can make one right now here in a couple hours and have your own. Yeah, of course. Yeah. You got a lot of raid. And I want to give a shout out to Dow House as well as a platform. It's really a great platform.
Yeah, Dow House.
Yeah. And Raid Guild is if you need to hire some freelancers to get shit done, look up Raid Guild and have them. Raid Guild. And speak to the yeah, talk to him. Okay, governance tokens. I'm going to or her, yeah. Okay, so they might not be transferable. Actually, these days, that's probably good that they're non-transferable because you don't have to get into security concerns. But if they have dividends, then you again might want to think about security. The bad part about it is they market value, so you can't sell them, right? If there's not that uptick of generational wealth or whatever, liquidity. One of the things that Moloch v3, this framework that Dow House and Cali use, is, and it's a framework that was built last December, so it's just a year old. That one allows people to have tokens that just through a vote can toggle on or off, transferable, non-transferable.
Can anyone tell me why it might be bad to have a transferable governance token? Why? Because you can buy your way to power.
that's a big
If you
reason
can
too.
buy your way to controlling the DAO, you open your up to however, the nth degree of possible exploits. So your governance token is something that I firmly believe should not be financialized.
Even if there weren't security concerns, exactly.
Even if there
There's
weren't
still pitfalls
securities
with it.
concerns,
Yeah,
yes.
and we're on the governance part of it.
So would it be like a soul bound?
That's non-transferable. That's the
yeah,
thing we say
it's
non-transferable.
soulbound token, different ERC, but pretty much the same thing.
And soul is in your human soul, so it's a little bit spiritual. Whatever, it's fine. It's marketing. A lot of this is marketing.
Corruptible human who
Yeah,
will
like
take
just be a good person.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Yeah,
Spiritual.
it's what is it? The thing in Potter with the big bad guy where he puts himself in Horcruxes. It's
Oh,
anyway.
Voldemort?
Yeah,
That stinker.
That's how I think of soulbound, but that's besides the point. Might avoid employer dynamic problems of the past. Yeah, because there isn't an employer. That hierarchies are. I personally believe there should be hierarchies, but narrow hierarchies. Just like when you write script, it's great that you have nested, but you don't want to nest 5 times, just 1 or 2 times. And that seems to be a pretty good fit. And those hierarchies being broad, so like small groups of people. And that helps with, at least in the clinic, it helps with quality assurance. Raid Guild might do a similar thing. They have to speak to that. But you basically have one person to make sure that other people, like everyone, is doing their job. Addie, when she was speaking, that kind of job that she does. And a major reason to buy into the space, honestly, is to get out of that employer-employee thing. So if you were a victim of layoffs, DAOs have the potential to, at least people have a voice in that process of deciding who can stay, what departments get cut, that kind of thing, as opposed to just a small group that have giant golden parachutes. Potential individual liability, though, because you do that, because you self-govern. The flip side is that you also you have the responsibility. If you want to be your own parent, you also then are the adult in the room. Voting powers, there's one token, one vote. That's the one where whales can sometimes just do what they want, and they just kind of see the community does what they want, and then they don't peep up, and then they just swoop in and basically veto. But at the same time, a lot of projects can't really succeed if they don't have whales. So it's lesser of evils, and but also people. Well, whatever. I mean, it's one strategy, one person, one vote. That one we like at Lexdal quite a bit. Lexdal though is a membership guild, so it works easily for us because you just have one membership like everyone else. Oftentimes those coincide with NFTs, PFP NFTs. So the NFT that you have as your profile picture, that's what a PFP is. Those ones, if they have voting rights, very frequently that voting right is
1-to-1.
Yeah, 1-1. Sometimes it can be just one wallet, one vote, but as we're building out this decentralized identity, it's more and more one person, one vote.
Yeah.
And there's this thing called Sybil attacks, and that's a big reason to go one person, one vote.
If you would like a basic introduction to, I think we cover 7 different types of voting. We do, normal quorum-based consensus. We do quadratic voting, holographic consensus, and a number of others. At the Dow Research Collective, we just published our overview on governance. I'm going to show that. I spent 6 months working on it. Of governance, not ungovernance.
I like ungovernance though.
I do like ungovernance,
Damn, those 6 months.
but right, yeah, it's just been completely demolished.
And
But
that's what QF stands for. It stands for quadratic voting.
Dow Research Collective. Yeah.
Yeah, QF stands for quadratic voting. Quadratic voting is how actually a lot of grants work in this space, especially. It's something that was developed with a combination of Gitcoin, so Web3 native space, and Microsoft. Microsoft is motivated because their departments are humongous and they should play well with each other, but they don't even realize the other exists because they're all so big. And so quadratic voting is, I think of it kind of as an average method, like a mean, median, and mode. But what it does is it takes square roots of whatever people are voting, and then adds those together, and then squares that square root. The add of the square roots.
Squaring a square, and we'll stop the math there because Kyle will go forever and ever on the complex mathematics.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Okay. So number 7. Do you own any? Can we get in there? Come on. There we go. Number 7 is up.
cool.
Oh, and now we're at Q&A. So I'll wait for number 7,
Perfect.
and then.
You guys happy this is your last talk of the day? Get out of here, go partake in something that might be legal here, not legal elsewhere.
It hasn't updated the poll for some reason. Still,
Oh, pardon me. Oh yeah.
do you own any? Oh, okay.
There we go. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, can everyone see the poll? Who's taking it?
So, I wanted to ask a question
Yeah.
to kind of go back to what you were talking about earlier. If there's a treasury that's in a multi-sig, and
Controlled by a multi-sig.
like a 2 out of 3 type, or has it got to be 3 out of 5?
Oh, that's subjective. You can choose how many signers are on the SIG.
But my specific is a 2 out of 3. So the
Okay.
main CEO or main person of the company was one of those and did pass away. The developer and the designer still have the multi-sig but refuse to do something with it because of the fact that they're.
Yeah, I guess you still have majority. The
Would you
code
still
code
be
doesn't know
able to
that the
come back in and basically add another person to that multi-sig to come like kind of almost take over?
you wouldn't need 3 out of 3 signatures, right? You would only need 2 out of 3 on a 2 for 3 multi.
Is that what the fact pattern is? You got 2 out of 3?
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
So he said the third party is deceased, but can the 2 of 3 still execute?
The way I design my little treasuries for patrons we help out at the clinic, the third signature we don't actually ever want to use. That means that's for the arbitrator, and that means something wrong has happened. So based on your facts, that should be okay.
Well, I agree with that. The problem that I'm or running is like, I guess, is there a way to actually enforce those guys to do something with it? Because that's the problem. It's a developer and another
So
person, and they refuse to do anything.
theoretically, you're not one of the 3.
No, I'm not. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
This is a real situation you're describing.
to compel someone,
Well, we can't offer any real
to compel
advice
someone
on
that requires court. If it's under 10K, you could do that in small claims court. Generally, that's usually what small claims court
Yeah,
is.
that makes sense.
And so that's a bit easier, and perhaps you just threatening that will get them to pay more attention. you think that what are your grounds for it, you might not actually be able to recover that specifically, but you could get cash from them in another way.
It was a general company, like LLC, and they were doing their own thing. They had their own DApp and all their own stuff, and then they decided, okay, we're going to create a DAO. They created a DAO, did a launch token for the DAO to get all the liquidity, and then literally passed away halfway through the liquidity. So it was like, it's all just sitting in there. We all in DAO members are all still part of the DAO, but we can't do it.
What's the name of this DAO? I think I remember this.
So yeah, so if people who can actually move the multi-sig still, if those people still can, they're just not,
Yeah.
then okay, there's a potential, and if they're not listening to you, then you can maybe first hire a lawyer to send them a strong letter, escalate, whatever.
Sticks and carrots, figure out what they want.
But before, what I was saying about the negative of non-custodial is that if you've bricked it, you've bricked it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a total learning experience. Obviously,
Yeah.
for his whole main company, he didn't even have multi-sig. So like literally everything was lost. Millions.
Yeah. Well, if it's millions, then more reason for you to consult with a lawyer about it if you're serious.
Yeah.
And you can do as a group. So that would be a really, if you're going to do that, it would be much better if you've got a collective of you. And you've seen that with rug pulls, right? Where a collective of, so you can do that kind of thing. You could even make your own Discord, and then that's when you all speak as one voice and consult a lawyer. This is from the Camp Biddle crew. Join the Telegram if you haven't already.
Yeah.
It's right here.
Do we have any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, so it's about employment
Okay.
to U.S. individuals of projects that have a majority of the team abroad. Like, for instance, it's a DeFi project in Sri Lanka, because I'm thinking about it. So the team is in Singapore, and the operations are in Singapore. I think one more country, kind of, they build everything there. It will be a DEX. And then they're hiring for a couple of roles for in the U.S. So what does it mean for U.S. persons to decide?
So-
Can it be? And let's say I don't think they will be registered in the U.S. as a security. They remain, right? It's legal still, right? They remain like registered in the local market.
These are facts beyond us, unfortunately.
And if
And then they're very specific.
Very
Yeah.
specific. If the origin company,
Project is very widespread. Like, I mean, there are so many projects.
so
Just because lots of people are doing it isn't
it doesn't mean it's right.
ICO or a lot of ICOs.
But I'm not saying
yeah.
it was right. I'm asking you if it was right.
We don't know. We don't know. That's too complex, unfortunately.
So
I know that
if-
sucks, but it's true.
Yeah.
One
Unfortunately,
thing,
we
just
won't
'cause
have.
We've already passed time, so
Okay.
we can stay for some more questions. But I just
Very simple question.
sure we can stay
Wait.
for more questions. It's fine. But I just want to make sure that we finish up so people can leave in just of time. So I'm going to do the this right here.
Oh yeah. Who wants a hat? No.
Yeah, it wants a chicken dinner. Okay, ready? Woo!
Hopefully this works. I just found this website.
All right. Yeah. And the winner is
Andrea.
Andrea.
All right. There we go. Awesome. Okay, guys. Well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you so much for your time. It was really great to come up here and speak to you. Yeah.
Hi everyone, still Derek. It's late. I